Welcome to our lesson today. We are considering creative writing, and the topic is writing a story. Writing a story. Can you mention our lesson objectives? One of them is to identify myth, legend, fairy tale, and fable in short stories presented. I will present short stories for you to identify them as myth, legend, fairy tale, or fable. Then we shall read a story and identify its features. You have to write a story. Read them again. Identify myth, legend, fairy tale, and fable in short stories presented. Then read a story and identify its features. Thereafter write a story. This topic is not new to us. We treated it in comprehension, and I'm handling it along the line that it has been learnt, that we studied it before. So pay close attention. I will start straight with activity. Let us begin the lesson this way. For each story presented, you read, listen to me, identify the type. Is it a legend, myth, fairy tale, or fable? Here's the first one. Before, a puppy had the same mouth as a human being. However, he always wanted to speak about everything despite being told by his parents not to be talkative. One day, he was speaking with his mother and two people called him at the same time. He wanted to answer both of them at the same time, and his jaws got broken. That is why it has a very wide mouth till date. What story is it? Identify. The second story. Please do not consider these stories as complete. These are just summaries. So when I ask you to write a story for me, don't write this short thing for me. Well, I'm just using summaries so that we may not waste time. Thief people originated from Congo, running away from their enemies. They came across River Aye and were stranded, about to be caught by the enemies. Green snakes came from nowhere and tied themselves together, forming a bridge for them to cross. They escaped the enemies and sojourned to where they are found today in Nigeria. What type of story is this? Legend, myth, fable, or fairy tale? The third one goes this way. Can you read with me? Rhea gave birth to two twins, Romulus and Remus. The gods intended to harm her sons, so she hid them in a river. A she-wolf found them and brought them up. They both wanted to become kings when they became adults. They built a city but quarreled about how it should be run. Romulus picked up a rock and killed his brother Remus so that he could get to rule the city. He called the city Rome. What type of story is this? There lived a king whose beautiful daughter did not like any suitor that came to marry her. At the end, a skull from the spirit world borrowed parts of the body and clothes, shoes and jewelry and cane. She agreed to marry him, not knowing that she would be taken to the spirit world. Because of her good behavior, the skull's mother hid her from being eaten and sent her through the wind to her people, who were very happy to see her after a very long time of thinking she was dead. What type of story is it? Let's look at the answers from the questions and stories. Number one, the puppy story is an example of a fable. What is a fable? Stories that use animals as human beings. Stories that use animals as human beings. Imagine a dog presented as someone speaking. It also teaches lessons, and we're meant to learn from the story that talking too much is not good. The puppy did and had its jaws wide open. The next is a thief story, which is an example of a myth. A thief story is an example of a myth. Myth in that it has to do with a certain group of people's origin. Thief people's origin, how they came into Nigeria. The next one is the king's daughter story, which is a fairy tale. A fairy tale in that fairy tales talk about stories that involve supernatural beings. spiritual beings, and that's exactly what we see. A skull coming from the spiritual world to marry in the land of human beings. The last one is Rea's children's story. How will you call this story? It is an example of a legend. How is it a legend? It talks about how two people brought Rome into being. At the same time, it is a myth in that it talks about how Rome came into being. You can treat it as legend, you can treat it as myth, although specifically it is treated as legend. Pay close attention as we read this together. It is actually one of the stories whose summary we used for the test questions. When I ask you to write a story for me, it should be something like this. Write it properly. Write it comprehensive enough. Can we go? The disobedient daughter who married a skull. The disobedient daughter who married a skull. This is the title of the story. Effiong Eden was a native of Cobham town. He had a very fine daughter whose name was Effiong. She refused those offers of marriage in spite of repeated advice from her parents. She said she would only marry the strongest and best-looking man in the country who would be capable of loving her properly. Most of the men her parents wanted her to marry were rich, but old and ugly, so she disobeyed her parents, who were very unhappy. The skull, who lived in the spirit land, heard of the beauty of this Calabar virgin and wanted to marry her. He went to his friends and borrowed different parts of the body. From one he got a good head, another a body, a third gave him strong arms, and a fourth a fine pair of legs. At last he was a complete gentleman and left the spirit land for Cobham market. He saw Effiong and admired her very much. Effiong heard that a very fine man was seen in the market, who was better looking than any of the natives. She went to the market, saw the skull and fell in love with him and invited him to her house. The skull was delighted and went home with her. She introduced him to her parents, and immediately he asked their consent to marry their daughter. At first they refused, as they did not wish her to marry a stranger, but at last they agreed. He lived with Effiong for 2 days in her parents' house and took his wife back to his country. Her parents tried to persuade her not to go, but she made up her mind to go, and they left. After they went, the father consulted his juju man, who told him that his daughter's husband belonged to the spirit land and that she should surely be killed. They therefore all mourned her as dead because there was nowhere to trace her. After walking for several days, Effiong and the skull crossed the border between the spirit land and the human country and entered the spirit land. One man came to the skull and demanded his legs, another his head, the next his body, and so on. In a few minutes, the skull was left by itself in all its natural ugliness. She was frightened and wanted to return home, but the skull did not allow her. When they arrived at the skull's house, they found his mother, who was a very old woman, quite incapable of doing any work, who could only creep about. Effiong tried his best to help her, cooked her food and brought water and firewood for her. The old woman was very grateful for these attentions and soon became quite fond of Effiong. One day, the old woman told Effiong that she was very sorry for her, that all the people in the spirit land were cannibals and would come down, kill her and eat. The skull's mother then hid Effiong for taking proper care of her. She promised she would send her back to her country as soon as possible. The old woman sent for Spider, who was a very clever hairdresser, and made him dress Effiong's hair in the latest fashion. She also presented her with several gifts on account of her kindness. She then made a juju and called the winds to come and convey Effiong to her home. At first, a violent tornado came with thunder, lightning, and rain, but the skull's mother sent him away as unsuitable. The next wind to come was a gentle breeze. So she told the priest to carry Afion to her mother's house and said goodbye to her. Very soon afterwards, the priest deposited Afion also at her home and left her there. When the parents saw their daughter, they were very glad, as they had for some months thought she was lost. Her father organized a feast and called all the young girls who belonged to Afion's company to come and dance. The feast and dancing was kept up for 8 days and nights. When the rejoicing was over, the father reported what had happened to the head of the town. The king then passed a law that parents should never allow their daughters to marry strangers who came from a far country. Then the father told his daughter to marry a friend of his, and she willingly consented and lived with him for many years and had many children. Let us look at the features of the story we have read. The features. The topic is not a new topic, so I cannot explain everything, but characters. There are people, animals, or things in the story. People, things, animals that I've used to convey the story. So in this story we have Afion, Scar, Scar's mother, Spider, King, Gentle Breeze, and others. You know them. When you're writing your story, I want to see the characters properly arranged based on their roles. Thank you. Another one is setting. What is setting? The time and place of a story. And in this case, where is the setting? In the story, what's the setting? There is a shift in setting. The setting is not in one place. The physical setting, as in the location, is not in one place. That is why you have Cobham Town and Spirit Land. Cobham Town and Spirit Land. However, in terms of place, the setting captures when Afion finally married. With regards to time, the story captures when Afion finally married. Another one is the plot. How is the plot of the story? How is the plot of the story? It is straightforward because it uses simple language, past tense, which is common to stories. There is also chronology of events. That is, the events being arranged with one happening, then another following. Plot simply has to do with how the incidents, the happenings in a story are arranged. So this is a straightforward plot. Another feature of the story is theme. What is theme? The central idea. And what are the central ideas from the story? One of them is pride and arrogance. Pride and arrogance. Who is so proud and arrogant here? Afion. She cannot take any advice even from her parents. She is based on what she wants. Another one is reward for goodness. Afion has been good to the old woman, that is Carl's mother, and at the end she has rewarded her by saving her life. Another one is that of deception. Afion has been deceived by the Scar. Also, Scar's mother has deceived him by pushing back his wife to her people. Next is lessons. What are the lessons from the story? A lesson is different from a theme because a lesson is stated using a whole sentence, but a theme can be stated using a word or phrase. A lesson can be stated using a sentence, complete sentence. And these are lessons from the story. Not all that glitters is gold. For example, the Scar. He came properly dressed but ended up being the Scar. Not all that glitters is gold. Another one is respecting the elderly guarantees long life. When you respect elders, it guarantees long life. Another one is refusing to take advice is dangerous. Refusing to take advice is dangerous. This is the activity on the topic, a very simple activity. Write an interesting story of not less than 300 words and submit as a Word document on Class Dojo. Write an interesting story of not less than 300 words and submit as a Word document on Class Dojo. Do not copy someone's work. Do not copy someone's work. Any work copied will be detected and cancelled. If you copy, the work is automatically cancelled. Don't.